to go over and start topic 2 this week. So I'm going to click on the topic 2 tab under lessons in Blackboard. And we'll start with the first one. And this topic is going to start with self-awareness and why self-awareness is so important. Ignore this. This does not have to do with you or these. So starting with our self-image. Our self-image is how we view ourselves and how we think of ourselves in comparison to other people, where we fit into the world. And our self-image impacts all of our experience that we're going to have, and it's affected by all of our experiences, both our successes and our failures. So if you are confident, if you're secure in yourself, you've likely had some success in your life, you've likely been exposed to positive reinforcements, you've had support in your life. That's not to say if you have had those things that you're automatically going to have a high self-image. These things all just come into play. And our self-image is not singular. There's many layers to it. So today you might feel on top of the world. You might feel confident in who you are. And tomorrow you wake up and you're just in a funk and things aren't really going well, and your self-image may be less than it was even the day before. So who are you? I want you to take a moment, just pause. You don't have to write these down since we're not in a classroom setting. We're not going to be sharing them. But I want you to take a minute and think of how you would complete this sentence. I am blank. And I want you to think of the 5 top ways that you describe yourselves. I'm going to just hold on 1 second for you to come up with what these are. Or you can pause it and then go on, because I don't want to sit here just blank. So after you review what you came up with, I want you to think about how those ways that you define yourself, how are they associated with your social environment? So now, usually when I'm sitting in a classroom setting and I ask people to share what they came up with, I get a lot of roles. So I might have, I am a daughter, I am a best friend, I am a teacher, I am a baseball player, those type of things. And you can see how in those, when we're talking about roles, how those are very clearly socially impacted. So it's who you spend your time with, what role you have in your life, and how that impacts others. But then if you think about things like, I am kind, I am generous, I am easily frustrated, I am excitable. These things are also types of responses I often get. And I will have people sometimes argue like, well, those aren't socially constructed. But if you think about it, usually those emotional responses are brought out by others, by actions of others, by our social network, our social environment. So the reason I have us do this exercise is to show that even when we don't realize it, the social aspects come into play almost always in how we define ourselves. So other people, other influences impact our own self-identity. Significant others. So those obviously play a huge role in how we define ourselves. And when I say significant others, we tend to think of a romantic relationship. But for this context, it's anybody that plays a significant impact in how you identify yourself. So it could be a romantic relationship, it could be friendship, it could be parents, siblings, however it is that we define ourselves, our significant others in our lives. Social comparison. So this is one that people tend to feel some discomfort with, is when I tell them how often we compare ourselves to other people. And you tend to think like, or I often get how people don't care about how they compare to other people. But the truth of the matter is that we all do it. If you come into a new classroom setting, when you sit down, we kind of do this evaluation of the room around us. We take a look, We see who's there. And we tend to think, who are the people that I could relate most to? So those tend to be people around the same age, maybe the same gender, maybe the same nationality as us, whatever it is that makes you subconsciously think, okay, this is the person that might be the most similar to me. It may be during discussions in class that you realize you have similar interests with. But these are things that we do constantly, all the time, in environments that we're new to and environments we're familiar with. We compare where we rank to other people. Our self-concept, this is different than our self-image in that our self-concept impacts our self-image. So this is when we feel confident in who we are and knowing ourselves, it's going to impact those other aspects, and particularly our self-image. Okay, so personality development. Sigmund Freud is considered like the grandfather of psychology. He's very controversial. I'm not going to claim to be a Freud expert. So I'm not going, most of you will likely take psychology at some point if you already haven't, and you'll get much more into these psychologists. But just real quickly, I wanted to go over Freud's personality development, so the psychodynamic approach. And Freud discusses the id, ego, and superego. So what Freud says is that our personality develops in 3 stages. The id is what we're born with. So that's our basic drive. So this is what keeps us alive. If you've ever seen kittens be born, as soon as they come out, mama cleans them off or whatever, and immediately they are seeking the breast. They want to start nursing right away. This, according to Freud, is that id. It's that need for survival. So a newborn baby, even if it hasn't been shown how to breastfeed or whatever, it naturally roots around for mother's breast because it's looking for survival. And that survival is the need to that survival is based on the pleasure principle. So if you're hungry, and some of you can picture this, that you've worked all day, you get out of work, and you are just famished, you're starving, and you want to eat so bad, like you know the like old saying, like I could eat a cow or whatever, and you literally feel like you could eat anything that's placed in front of you. It's that immediate satisfaction you get when you finally do eat, that pleasure. So the id includes things like hunger, thirst, and sexual need. And that sexual need aspect is where Freud is controversial, because some people think that shouldn't be included there because it kind of hinders that it's at the same level of lack of controlling as fulfilling your thirst and hunger, and that sexual needs are things that, yes, help keep us going, but that it should be something that we can control as well. And if you follow kind of along the lines of what Freud's saying, is that no, it's this instinctual need that we have to fulfill. Then I'm going to skip over the superego for a second and go to ego, just because it follows in development sequence. So the ego develops after the first year, and this is kind of where we start getting a little bit of logic and stuff that comes into play. So going back to the id, if I was starving and you were sitting next to me eating a big fat cheeseburger and I'm just starving, and the only thing I have developed within me is the id, I might just reach over and grab that cheeseburger out of your hand and just start chomping on it. Where the ego is going to say, okay, like, let's be realistic here. You might be hungry, but you're not hungry enough to steal somebody else's food. Like, let's be socially acceptable here. Let's do the right thing. Maybe ask for a piece, go get your own, whatever it might be. But we start getting some realistic, rational, logical parts of us developing. Then you go to the superego, and this is where we get like our moral compass, and I say it's like our guilt check. So now is the point where you start thinking, okay, if I do this, if I make this decision, am I going to feel guilty about it after? Am I going to be okay with this? So that cheeseburger idea, if the id is just developed and I reach over and grab it and start chomping on it, then the ego is going to say, oh, that's probably not your best decision. You should probably do something else. And the superego is going to say, whoa, don't do that. That's, terrible. You're going to steal their food, that's not ethical or whatever. So that's that moral development, or component that comes into play. So that is just a super, very basic explanation of ID's theory. I'm not going to go into Adler's theory. We really don't use that anymore in the rest of the context, so I'm going to just skip that portion and go on to section 2. So section 2, when we are looking at, so now I'm going to talk about Erik Erikson. And Erikson is honestly my favorite psychologist. I hope that you have heard of him before. I use Erikson in my other courses, and the reason for this is because Erikson takes psychological development and he discusses it from birth all the way up to death. He doesn't say that, I don't know, I feel like Freud can be a more simplistic way of looking at something that's complex, and I feel like Erikson takes it and looks at the whole person instead of just these 3 seemingly basic components. So trust versus mistrust is the first stage of Erikson's 8 stages of development, and this is going to happen in the earliest moments of life. And this is where children are taught that if their needs are met when they have them, that they can trust the people that are in their lives to fulfill their needs when they arrive. So if a newborn baby is hungry and it's crying and mama picks it up and nurses it, or daddy picks it up and gives it a bottle, or grandma and comforts the baby, you're teaching that child that caregivers, people in its life, are going to fulfill its need when they arrive. Instead, if you just ignore the child, don't feed it, or don't feed it regularly, you're teaching that child that when it has a physical need, when there's something it needs in its life, that they're not going to get that need fulfilled. The second stage is autonomy versus doubt, and this is ages 1 to 3. And this is where a child starts becoming more independent and wanting to explore their world, and they start having like their own opinions and thoughts. So if any of you have ever had like that toddler stage, that 3-year-old stage, they become very independent. They want to make their own decisions. Everything's no, I do, or me, because they're starting to explore their world and figuring out for themselves what it is they're able to do on their own. And if you have a caregiver that is supportive of that exploration, of that growth and development, then your child's going to learn that they live in a world that they can play a role in meeting their own needs and taking on their own challenges. Where if instead, if the caregiver is constantly ridiculing them, punishing them, disciplining them, not giving them the opportunities to explore their world, they're going to start having doubts within themselves. And those doubts can lead later on in life where they question their own ability to tackle challenges and take on tasks. The third stage is initiative versus guilt, and this is the age where children so want to please us. They want, this is when mom and dad or grandma or grandpa or aunt and uncle, they're doing laundry, and the child comes over and they want to help you fold the clothes, and they're taking initiative. They want to try. And this is where they take the towel and they like bunch it up in a ball and then stack it. And depending on what your reaction is, can go a long way in how this child sees their own ability. So if you're supportive of it, wow, that was a great job, thank you for helping me, I can't do it without you, then that child's going to feel like they have initiative and they're going to want to try new things. If instead you shame them, oh my gosh, what did you do? This is a mess. Now I'm going to have to refold it. Just go away. Go play. I don't need you here. It's going to start, because they're looking to please and they're looking for that positive feedback, that it's going to still guilt in them that they didn't do the right way, that they didn't make you happy. The fourth stage is industry versus inferiority. This is ages 6 to 12, and this is where children start taking on some of their own interests and self-control. So a lot of parents struggle with this stage because up until this point, the parents and caregivers have had the main say in their life. They've said who their friends are going to be, where they can go, who they can socialize with, and now they're entering school, they're making new friends, they might be joining clubs like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, dance class, So they're getting out there more, and suddenly the caregivers are not the only influence in this child's life. So this is giving the child some industry over themselves, making them feel like they have some control to make their own decisions. Now, if the parent doesn't allow that, they may feel inferior to their classmates, to their friends. They may not feel like they are as capable as others. The fifth stage is identity versus role confusion. A lot of you are probably in this stage right now. And to me, this is like one of the most difficult stages because you're really struggling. On one hand, you're still a child and you still want to be cared for, nurtured, loved, and feel secure. On the other hand, you're feeling very independent and you want to explore the world and you want to take things on and you want to be responsible. And it's this constant like tug of war of whether or not you're an adult or a child, adult to child. One of my children is very much in this stage now, and she'll come down and she'll like be having a rough day and she'll kind of lay on my lap and she'll be like, Mom, it's so awful, and she'll kind of vent to me about everything that's going on, and I'll rub her back while she's talking and just let her be a kid. And then she'll kind of leave, go upstairs, and then a little bit later she'll come down and I'll go over to her and I'll hug her and I'll love her and I'll, are you doing better, baby? Is everything okay? And she kind of like shrugs me off. Mom, can you kind of give me some space? Like, why are you always on me? Can you just leave me alone? And I'm looking at her like she's got two heads. It's like, wait, 15 minutes ago you were just laying on me, needing me, and now I can't come near you, I can't look at you. And so it's that stage that on one hand you want to be independent and can do it all and I don't need anyone. On the other hand, I still want to be babied and cared for and loved and nurtured. The next one is intimacy versus isolation. The rest of you that weren't in the last stage, you're probably at this one. And this is ages 20 to 40. And this is where you start building those significant other relationships. You get into committed partnerships. You may get married. You may start having children. Or maybe you have been jaded in life and you are destined to, I don't care, I can't trust anyone. I'm not going to trust anyone. I'm going to just close myself off, and you're left in a state of isolation. Then the next one is generativity versus self-absorption, and I consider this like the midlife crisis stage. So this is where a lot of times you've been kind of committed your life to caring for other people. You've met responsibilities, and now you start trying to kind of plan beyond that. So do you want, are you living a life where you're satisfied? Are you happy? Are you happy in your career? Are you doing some fun things? Is there balance? Or is it this stage of self-absorption where you're so focused on like success and money and wealth that you're not able to look at the bigger picture? And lastly is integrity versus despair. And this can be a really sad stage. And some of you may have parents or grandparents that have been at this stage. And this is like age 65 to death. I know it sounds morbid, but at this stage is where we kind of take reflection of our life. We look back and we think, okay, have I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in my life? Have I done what I wanted to do? And if you have and you feel satisfied in that, you're going to have this state of integrity. If you haven't, you may be in a state of despair, regret, having sadness that you feel like you've missed out on things, or maybe you had a falling out with your brother years ago and you haven't talked in 20 years and you don't even remember anymore what the falling out was about. And now you're at this point in your life where you're looking back and you realize all this time that has been lost and you have despair over that. So my advice to you is, as you're living your life and you get to this point and you're live your life so that when you get to this point and you are doing some self-reflection, you're looking back, that you aren't at this state of despair, that you can say, I've told everyone the things that matter. I tell the people that I love them. I don't hold on to grudges. I don't have regrets in my life, because it really can impact the end when it comes time. Okay, I'm going to skip this. Yes. Okay, so now we're going to go on to section 3. read through those other parts. They're just not significant for me to go over right now with you guys. So personality types, and part of the homework assignment for this chapter is going to be to do a personality test, and you're going to be given letters. And first of all, the personality test I give you, it's the Myers-Briggs abbreviated version. Perhaps you've done the long version before, but the long version, it costs money, and I can't get a free version for you guys, unfortunately. So because of that, I just use this abbreviated one. It's still pretty darn accurate, and I've had great success with it. Some of you may have done the actual one before, and that's one that like you take, it's like 160 questions or something. It's just this intense personality test, but that one is really amazing if you ever get a chance to do it. But this one gives you a good idea. So the first part is extrovert versus introvert, and these are words we're pretty familiar with. If you're extrovert, you're more social, outgoing, you like social situations, you tend to have larger groups of friends and be around more people. Where introverts, and this is like a key part, is that we gain our energy from solitude and silence. So it's not saying that you don't have friends, that you don't do things, that you don't like having a social life or anything. It just shows that you also need that downtime, that alone time, that quiet time in order to regain your energy. Sensing or intuition. Sensing people tend to be very practical, realistic people. So if they're going to make a decision, they want facts to base it on. They're not just going to be willy-nilly like, oh, where intuition people kind of say, they might say that thing like, well, my gut tells me. So intuition people, they have feelings about things, emotional connections to things. Where sensing people, if they hear somebody say, well, I just have this gut feeling about it, the sensing person's going to be like, what does that mean? What is a gut feeling? Like, no, the facts say that we need to do it this way. Where the intuition people are much more feeling generated. They'll make decisions that way. Thinkers or feelers. Thinkers use logic, analysis to make decisions. So they're going to be the ones that are going to sit down. They're going to have a pros and cons list. They're going to weigh things out. And when they come up with a decision, they're going to tend to be firm about their decision because they've weighed all the options. They've looked at the big picture. So when I make my decision, they're going to be likely to sway from, or not likely to sway from it or change. Where feelers are going to be more the ones to use their feelings, their values, insight from friends, family, whether or not it's going to cause conflict. All of these things are going to come into play. And sometimes feelers will be more apt to sacrifice their own needs in the desire to make the most peaceful decision or keep things the most unrattled. And last is judgment or perception. And the word judgment always tends to throw people off because they see this and they think that it means judgmental, and that is not at all what it means. When you get J, what it means is that you tend to use your judgment when making decisions. So this quote, they plan their work and work their plan. And this is the best way of describing a judgment person because they're list makers and schedule makers. So they will sit down, they come up with a very detailed plan of how things are going to get done, and then they're going to use their judgment to come up with that plan, and then they're going to follow that plan, very structured. And so because of that, they're likely to be very successful. They're going to be regulated and controlled, and they're going to be successful in the end because of it. Now, they also tend to get more rattled if a curveball's thrown their way or something doesn't work out the way they planned. But overall, judgment people tend to be very successful in the plans that they make. Perception people tend to be more flexible. They kind of, if it happens, it happens. They might make plans, but it is a more general plan. So yeah, we'll get together today or we'll get together tomorrow, but there's not like a set time where they're going to meet, what's going to be going on. Everything's just more laid back and easygoing. And these people tend to feel smothered by things like deadlines and schedules. Okay, just read through this part and this, yeah. Okay, so I think those are the key points that I wanted to go over for topic 2. Take a look at all of this, and as always, if you have any questions about any of the information that I've shared with you in these lectures, send me an email at hitchcockj@ecc.edu. Again, even the sections that I skipped over, please make sure that you read those and review. And then anything that was like about the dates or whatever, or the group project, just ignore that. That does not apply to your class this year. Okay, so I will talk to you guys on Friday. Have a great week. Bye.